Yeah.
Erika is very shrewd. She's very smart. And she was like, I know everything.
Hate is hate. It's evil. Charlie and I have always been very clear on our stance. Israel, Jewish people.
I wanted to hire her. I only had one problem. Charlie Kirk wanted to date her.
Hold up. Just stop everything and listen to this for a second. Hate is hate. It's evil. Charlie and I have always been very clear on our stance. Israel, Jewish people. And then that one line that keeps hitting different every single time you hear it. I know everything. 3 short clips. 3 completely different moments. 3 very different vibes from the same woman. When you put them side by side, something just doesn't sit right. Because the Erika Kirk the public sees, the devoted wife, the grieving widow, the woman everyone says is bravely holding Charlie Kirk's legacy together, looks nothing like the Erika Kirk that people closest to Turning Point USA and even some members of Charlie's own family are now quietly describing behind closed doors. Reports suggest Charlie Kirk's family is absolutely rocked right now. Not just by the heartbreaking loss of their son, but by the wave of questions and stories that have allegedly started surfacing ever since that tragic day. An old photo from 2019 has suddenly gone viral again. It shows Erika at a political reception in Arizona, standing right next to Netanyahu, son of the Israeli Prime Minister. The body language? Let's just say it looks surprisingly comfortable and familiar for what was supposed to be a simple meet and greet at a public event. And standing right there in the same frame? The very same well-connected operative who would later introduce Erika to Charlie Kirk. Coincidence? Maybe. But insiders are saying the timing and the details are raising some serious eyebrows. And that's not even the wildest part. People closest to the situation are now piecing together a version of events that allegedly looks very different from the polished story the public was given. From questions about her past relationships before meeting Charlie, to the way certain alliances and connections inside conservative circles were formed, to the unusually close dynamic that some claim developed with key figures even while Charlie was still leading the charge.
I wanted to hire her. I only had one problem. Charlie Kirk wanted to date her. Long story short, I was very worried he was going to scare her off and screw it up. And I was going to lose this incredible prospect. Like all things he put his mind to, Charlie accomplished everything he put his mind to.
Charlie Kirk built his entire reputation on asking the tough questions and refusing to let powerful people hide inconvenient truths. Now, it seems the toughest questions of all are landing right at the doorstep of the woman who shared his name and his mission. The family, according to those familiar with their circle, is reportedly devastated, not only by the loss, but by the growing sense that the picture they had of Charlie's marriage and inner world may not have been the full story. Folks, this one is messy. This one is complicated. And right now, the entire conservative space is watching, whispering, and wondering what exactly was really going on behind the scenes in one of the most high-profile marriages in the movement. And more importantly, how much of what we thought we knew was never the real picture at all. Stick around, because we're just getting started. To understand why Charlie Kirk's family is reportedly so rocked right now, you have to go back to the very beginning. Because the story of how Erika Kirk entered Charlie's world was never exactly straightforward, and details that once seemed innocent are now being looked at in a very different light by people closest to the situation. The man who made the introduction was Tyler Bohr, a well-connected figure deep inside conservative political circles with direct ties to the broader Trump-aligned infrastructure at the time. According to what Tyler himself has shared publicly, he was looking to bring Erika on board for professional opportunities. He wanted to hire her. There was only one problem. Charlie Kirk wanted to date her. Long story short, Tyler was reportedly very worried that Charlie, being Charlie, intense, driven, all in on everything he pursued, might scare her off and cause him to lose what he saw as an incredible prospect for the organization. But Charlie, being Charlie, didn't scare her off. He pursued her, won her over, and by all public accounts, he was completely devoted to her from that point forward. On the surface, it looked like one of those classic conservative power couple stories. Two sharp, faith-driven people coming together to fight for the same mission. Erika often spoke about how she hadn't seriously dated anyone for years before meeting Charlie. She allegedly told people she came into the relationship essentially fresh, no complicated history, no heavy emotional baggage from past relationships. It painted a picture of a clean slate, a woman ready to build something meaningful with a man who shared her values. Except, according to multiple sources familiar with her background, that narrative may not have told the full story. People close to the circles at the time are now quietly saying Erika had 2 significant relationships in the years directly leading up to meeting Charlie. Under normal circumstances, someone's dating history before marriage is their own business. Most folks aren't going to hold that against anyone. But when you pair the alleged playing of that past with everything that's allegedly started coming out since Charlie's tragic death, that small detail starts to feel like the first tiny crack in what some insiders now describe as a much larger wall of questions. Now, fast forward to June of 2019. A photo surfaces on social media. It's dated, it's timestamped, and it places Erika, then still Erika Nolan, before she took Charlie's last name, at a political reception in Arizona welcoming Netanyahu, the son of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. On its own, a photo at a public political event doesn't mean much. People snap pictures at these things all the time. Networking happens. Handshakes, smiles, small talk. It's part of the game in those circles. But what made this particular image stop people mid-scroll, according to those who've analyzed it closely, was the body language. They weren't standing like complete strangers at a formal reception. The positioning looked comfortable, close, relaxed, familiar even. And the timing? June 2019 lines up right around the period when Erika was reportedly beginning to develop her relationship with Charlie Kirk. So naturally, people started asking, how well did Erika actually know Netanyahu? And how long had that connection been there before it became public? What deepened the speculation even more was who else appeared in that same photo. Tyler Bohr, the same man who would later introduce her to Charlie, standing right there beside her. For anyone already wondering how orchestrated Erika's entry into Charlie's world might have been, that detail reportedly hit differently. Let's be very clear here. A single photo at a public event does not prove anything romantic or improper. Online communities have run with all kinds of interpretations that go far beyond what the image itself actually shows. But what it did do, according to the growing chatter, was raise a legitimate question that nobody in Erika's camp has ever directly addressed in detail. What exactly was the nature of that connection, and why has it never been fully explained? Because here's where things get even more layered. Charlie Kirk, by the final stretch of his life, was allegedly feeling serious pressure from major pro-Israel donors. Text messages that reportedly came from Charlie himself described losing a significant donor, figures around $2 million a year, because he refused to distance himself from certain colleagues or take stronger positions on certain issues. In those alleged texts, Charlie reportedly expressed frustration, saying he would not be bullied and that the pressure was leaving him with no choice but to consider stepping back from the pro-Israel cause entirely. For a man who had spent years being one of the loudest and most consistent pro-Israel voices in conservative media, that would have been an enormous shift. And the people closest to him apparently felt the weight of it. So when you place those alleged messages next to the 2019 photo of Erika standing warmly beside Netanyahu's son, and then watch Erika deliver passionate, emotional defenses of Israel in the weeks after Charlie's death, complete with the line "hate is hate," it's evil and reaffirming that Charlie and I have always been very clear on our stance. Israel. Jewish people. Some observers noticed a striking contrast. The internet being the internet, people started connecting dots. Erika, who by multiple accounts from insiders struggled to show visible public grief in the immediate raw days after the assassination, seemed to find genuine emotion and fire when speaking about Israel and the broader cause. For a public already hungry for answers in the wake of such a shocking loss, that contrast became fuel for endless discussion and speculation. Charlie's family, according to those familiar with their inner circle, reportedly found this period particularly painful. The man they raised valued loyalty, family, and personal integrity above almost everything. Now their son was at the center of a swirling narrative suggesting the woman he trusted most may have been navigating alliances and connections that looked very different from the devoted partner image presented publicly. If the Netanyahu photo was the spark that started the fire in certain online corners, then the questions around Andrew Colvett are the ones that insiders say haven't stopped burning. Andrew served as a Turning Point USA spokesman during Charlie's lifetime and is now co-hosting what was once Charlie's own show. According to multiple sources who have allegedly come forward since the assassination, some claiming they faced consequences for speaking up, there are persistent whispers inside the organization about an unusually close dynamic between Erika and Andrew that reportedly raised eyebrows even while Charlie was still leading. Let that sink in for a moment. Not some distant political connection, but a man working directly inside Charlie's media operation, someone Charlie presumably trusted as part of the inner team. Clips from appearances have been replayed endlessly. Watch the warmth, the laughter, the almost private quality in the way Andrew has spoken about Erika in certain moments. One particular line. Erika is very shrewd. She's very smart. And she was like, I know everything. And I was like, that's amazing, lands completely differently for people who followed the growing speculation. Turning Point insiders, according to the Whisper network that's allegedly grown louder, described the relationship between Erika and Andrew as something of an open secret in certain circles. Employees who reportedly raised concerns or asked questions were allegedly removed or sidelined, with Erika and Andrew said to be involved in those decisions together. The narrative some sources paint is not one of mourning, but of consolidation, taking over operations and moving forward with a surprising level of ease and coordination. Which brings us to one of the moments that keeps getting replayed. Erika's first appearance on what had been Charlie's show, just weeks after the assassination. Andrew was hosting. The tone of that exchange struck a lot of viewers as deeply unusual. The language, "You are rightly at the head of the table," the smiling, the ease between them, the almost forward-looking energy in the studio. Critics pointed out that this was a man who had just lost a close colleague and friend, yet the vibe read to some less like shared grief and more like something else entirely. To be fair, as many have noted, people grieve in very different ways. Shock does strange things to human behavior, and neither Erika nor Andrew has ever confirmed any romantic involvement whatsoever. These are allegations driven largely by anonymous insiders, online communities connecting dots, and a public still processing an unimaginable loss. Grief is messy. Public figures live under a microscope. What looks off to one person can look like strength and resilience to another. Still, the questions keep coming. Because when you layer the 2019 photo, the alleged donor pressures, the "I know everything" clip, the post-death appearances, and the reports of family members struggling to reconcile the public story with private realities, it starts to form a pattern that many say deserves real answers, not just silence. Charlie Kirk built his entire public identity on accountability, on asking hard questions and refusing to let powerful interests hide inconvenient truths. The deepest irony, according to those watching this unfold, is that the hardest questions right now seem to be landing squarely on the woman who shared his name and his platform. And somewhere in all of this, Charlie's family, the people who raised that man, who believed in the life and the marriage they thought they understood, are reportedly left sitting with a version of events that feels very different from what they were told. The silence, as it always does in these situations, only makes the questions grow louder. And that brings us to the heart of what so many people inside and outside Turning Point USA are now quietly debating behind the scenes. According to various sources who claim to have been close to the organization, the dynamic between Erika and key figures like Andrew Colvert allegedly went beyond professional collaboration even while Charlie was still very much in charge. Some insiders describe it as an open secret in certain factions, the kind of thing people whispered about but didn't dare say too loudly for fear of repercussions. Reports suggest that staff members who raised even mild questions about certain decisions or the closeness of certain working relationships were reportedly eased out or found their roles diminished, with Erika and Andrew allegedly playing central roles in those shifts. One particular leaked audio clip that has circulated widely shows Erika in a meeting days after the assassination, speaking with a tone that some listeners found surprisingly composed and focused on practical matters like merchandise, operations, and moving the mission forward. To her supporters, this was a sign of strength, a widow determined to honor her husband's legacy by keeping the machine running. To her critics, it came across as strangely detached from the raw grief one might expect so soon after such a devastating loss. Then there's the night before everything changed. On the evening of September 9th, according to Erika's own public accounts, Charlie slept in their toddler's room rather than in the marital bed. The explanation given was that he wanted rest before a major speaking event the next day and didn't want to disturb her. The following morning, he reportedly entered the bedroom only briefly, picked up his wedding ring and neck chain, and left without the usual hug or kiss goodbye. For a man described by virtually everyone who knew him as deeply affectionate, physically present with his family, and emotionally intentional, that departure, according to some who knew the couple, read as the behavior of someone carrying a heavy burden. Charlie's family, sources close to them suggest, has been particularly devastated by these accumulating details. They adored their son. They celebrated the marriage. They welcomed Erika into the family. Now they are reportedly grappling with a version of Charlie's personal life that looks nothing like the devoted, faith-centered union they believed they were supporting. The public reactions have been all over the map. On one side, loyal supporters of Erika and Turning Point USA defend her fiercely. They point out that she has continued the work, spoken passionately about Israel and Jewish people in line with Charlie's long-held views, and shown resilience in the face of unimaginable tragedy. They argue that grief doesn't have a single script. Some people throw themselves into mission mode, others break down in private. Body language experts, amateur and professional, have weighed in on both sides, with some saying her composed appearances show strength while others claim the smiles and ease in certain clips feel off given the timing. On the other side, Online communities, especially those following commentators like Candace Owens who have raised pointed questions, have gone into full connecting mode. The 2019 Netanyahu photo gets dissected frame by frame. The "I know everything" line gets replayed with ominous music. Clips of Erika and Andrew interacting post-death are slowed down and analyzed for vibes. Some have even speculated about donor pressures and whether certain international connections played a larger role in the tensions Charlie was allegedly feeling in his final days. What's fascinating, and frankly entertaining in that dark internet way, is how quickly this has split the conservative space. You've got people calling it baseless gossip designed to tear down a grieving widow who's simply trying to keep her husband's life's work alive. Others are treating it like the biggest what-if story since, well, pick your favorite political scandal of the last decade. Memes, reaction videos, deep dive threads, it's everywhere. One anonymous source allegedly close to the family put it this way in circulating reports: they are not just mourning Charlie. They are mourning the version of his life they thought they knew. Another insider claimed that certain employees who voiced concerns were told, in not-so-subtle terms, to fall in line or step aside. Whether any of that holds water remains to be seen, but the sheer volume of whispers has created a pressure cooker atmosphere inside what was once one of the most unified youth conservative organizations. And then there's the will rumor that exploded across social media. Reports, later traced back to what many believe was satire that got taken seriously, suggested Charlie had removed Erika from his will in the period before his death due to suspicions of infidelity. Fact-checkers quickly labeled it unfounded, but by then the story had already done laps around the internet. Even without hard confirmation, it added another layer of fuel to the speculation fire. Public figures have mostly stayed quiet or offered careful, measured support for Erika. But behind the scenes, according to multiple accounts, the conservative movement is watching this unfold with a mix of fascination, discomfort, and genuine concern about what it means for the future of Turning Point USA. Erika, for her part, has continued making appearances, running the organization, and speaking about continuing Charlie's mission. She has not directly addressed the bulk of the personal allegations swirling around her. She hasn't explained the 2019 photo in detail. She hasn't clarified the timeline of her relationships before Charlie. And she certainly hasn't responded to the claims about internal dynamics at Turning Point. Instead, she has leaned into the work, defending core stances on Israel, talking about faith, and vowing that the message will not die with the messenger. To her defenders, that's exactly what a strong widow and leader should do. To her critics, the silence itself speaks volumes. The contrast that keeps getting highlighted. Erika breaking down with visible emotion when discussing Israel and the fight against hate, while some observers claim her public grief for Charlie himself appeared more composed and less visibly raw in the earliest days. People grieve differently, of course. Trauma affects everyone uniquely. But in the age of endless clips and screenshots, those differences become content. They become debate fodder. They become the kind of material that keeps audiences glued to their screens asking, wait, what am I really seeing here? And that's the genius, or the tragedy, depending on your perspective, of how this story has unfolded. It taps into every tribal instinct we have. Loyalty to the mission versus demand for transparency. Support for a widow versus skepticism about power transitions. Faith in the official narrative versus the eternal internet urge to do your own research. Charlie Kirk spent his career encouraging young people to question authority, to dig deeper, to refuse to accept surface-level answers from powerful institutions. Now, whether intentionally or not, the spotlight has turned inward, onto the very organization and the very woman carrying his name forward. The family, sources suggest, remains caught in the middle, heartbroken by the loss and reportedly unsettled by the emerging questions that refuse to go away. So what happens next in a story this layered and this public? According to insiders, the fallout inside Turning Point USA has been real. Some staffers have allegedly left or been transitioned out amid the growing tension. Others remain loyal, insisting that the focus should stay on the mission Charlie built rather than on personal speculation. The organization continues its work, campus activism, the show, the broader conservative youth outreach, but the whispers haven't stopped. They've only gotten louder in certain corners. Legally, nothing concrete has emerged. No lawsuits from the family have been publicly filed over these personal matters. No official investigations have been launched into any of the alleged dynamics inside the organization. The assassination itself was carried out by a lone individual who was quickly apprehended, according to law enforcement. The broader conspiracy angles that some online voices have pushed, linking international donors, photos, or internal relationships to the tragedy, have been firmly rejected by authorities and by many mainstream conservative voices. Still, the reputational damage from endless speculation is hard to measure. Donations, public perception, internal morale, all of it can shift when a high-profile movement finds itself consumed by questions about its own leadership transition. Charlie's family, according to those close to them, has reportedly been focused on private grieving and protecting the children while trying to navigate a media environment that turns every detail into content. Learning that the marriage they celebrated might have had complexities and pressures they weren't fully aware of has allegedly been especially difficult. They raised a son who preached loyalty and integrity. Now they are watching his legacy get filtered through layers of rumor, interpretation, and second-guessing. Erika has shown moments of raw emotion in interviews, tearing up when talking about the little things she misses about Charlie, vowing that his voice will continue through the platforms he built. She has condemned those responsible for the assassination and emphasized that the mission of patriotism, faith, and truth must go on. Supporters see a woman demonstrating remarkable strength under impossible circumstances. Critics see someone moving forward with surprising speed and composure. The "I know everything" clip continues to be memed, analyzed, and debated. In one context, it sounds like confident leadership stepping up in crisis. In another, with all the surrounding speculation, it takes on a more ominous tone for those already inclined to question. Public backlash has been fierce on both sides. Some commentators have urged everyone to stop speculating and show basic human decency to a widow raising young children. Others argue that Charlie himself would have wanted the tough questions asked, even when they are uncomfortable and close to home. Hypothetical consequences float around in online discussions, potential internal power struggles at turning point, shifts in donor relationships, further splintering within the broader conservative movement already dealing with its own post-2024 fractures. Some wonder aloud whether Erika will be able to maintain unity or whether the organization will face a slow bleed of talent and support as the rumors persist. And yet, through it all, Erika has kept showing up. She has made appearances, given interviews, pushed the message forward. She has spoken about sleeping in her daughter's bed for months because she couldn't face the marital bedroom. She has talked about the adrenal rush Charlie felt the night before, his excitement for the work. She has framed the assassination not as the end, but as fuel for a greater awakening. Whether that resilience is admirable strength or something more calculated is exactly what the internet cannot stop debating. The deepest irony remains. Charlie Kirk made a career out of holding powerful people accountable and demanding transparency. Today, the most persistent questions are swirling around the woman who shared his bed, his last name, and now his organization's future. His family is reportedly left waiting for clarity that may never fully come. The conservative world is watching to see whether this becomes a temporary storm or a lasting fracture. And the public, you, me, everyone scrolling through clips at 2 a.m., keeps asking the same thing. What was really happening behind the closed doors of one of the most visible marriages in the movement? How much of what we were shown was the full picture? And in the end, when the cameras stop rolling and the speculation dies down, whose version of the truth will actually endure? The silence from those at the center only makes the noise around them grow louder. And in today's world, noise like this doesn't fade quietly. It builds. It spreads. It forces conversations that powerful people would often rather avoid. Charlie taught a generation to lean into those hard conversations. Maybe, just maybe, the hardest one of all is happening right now, inside the very house he helped build. Folks, this story is far from over. What started as quiet whispers has become one of the most talked about controversies in conservative circles today. Whether you believe every rumor, none of them, or somewhere in the messy middle, one thing is undeniable. The questions aren't going away. Charlie Kirk built his life on courage, the courage to speak truth, to challenge power, and to demand accountability even when it was uncomfortable. Now those same principles are being turned inward, and the entire movement is watching to see how it all shakes out. So here's what I want to know from you. Do you think the public deserves clearer answers about the dynamics inside Turning Point USA after Charlie's death? Or should we give Erika the space to grieve and lead without endless scrutiny? Have the contrasts in her public appearances raised legitimate questions for you, or do you see it as unfair piling on during an incredibly difficult time? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Be respectful. This isn't about tearing people down. It's about seeking truth in a world that loves to spin narratives. Tell me where you stand. Have you noticed the same things in the clips? Do you think the family's reported pain is being heard, or is the internet making everything worse? If you want more deep dives like this, unfiltered looks at the stories mainstream outlets won't touch, smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. We're just getting started uncovering what's really happening behind the polished images and carefully worded statements. Truth matters. Legacy matters. And sometimes the toughest truths are the ones closest to home. Thanks for watching. Stay curious, stay courageous, and I'll see you in the next one. God bless.